I think traditional legacy media is dying a slow, like death that's going to happen inevitably.
Is this the first generation we raise where they don't know how to be bored? Right? Phones, streaming, media, games, on demand. I mean, you at the same time, I think it's sad that you don't own anything anymore, right? But it's pretty cool that you could just press a button and stream whatever movie you want.
Now with all of the video games and all of that, it takes away our imagination because somebody else used their imagination and ingenuity to fill in that gap.
You can blame a lot of things for a lot of problems. I think the school system, a lot of the issues of the school system is the government, but meddling. A lot of it starts in the home for that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you got to force your kids out there to do things. Nobody wants to send their kid to school and you have to worry about what they're hearing or they're learning. I really hope that Democratic politicians and liberal politicians don't find a way to make this evil and take away from it and create more problems.
Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most.
Now, did you see, you know who David Sinclair is, right? You know him? He's like a longevity doctor. He works at Harvard. He's on the Harvard, or he's like the chief of like biology or something at Harvard. So he just recently came out and said this, corroborated this information. I thought this would be interesting to tell you that, because it just kind of keeps, it's like, if you're Pfizer, like this is the gift that keeps on giving. Like this is like the best Christmas gift you could ever have. Like I'm investing in Pfizer now. Like it's just unbelievable. But what they're saying now is that they've done studies. Viagra is a massive or strong anti-cancer. And it's now you have David Sinclair come in and say, yeah, I take Viagra too because for the anti-cancer benefits. So it makes sense, but where are you at with that, Len? What do you think about that news? The gift that keeps on giving for Pfizer is now everyone's going to start taking Viagra and Cialis for longevity.
Yeah, so I think it's it's Sildenafil or something like that. That's the drug that is generic for Viagra. And so I was also hearing about something with regard to ivermectin being an anti-cancer causing agent as well. So the reason why I bring that up is because it's a extra benefit when you have legacy drugs that can also serve as an additional benefit, because you don't have the billions and billions of dollars of clinical trials and testing, because you don't have to worry about humans and not knowing what the side effects are, because we already know about that. And talk about a wonder drug, because remember, it was originally Sildenafil was originally for like angina and heart related issues.
Chest pains.
And then the golden gift, which was for, ED, erectile dysfunction. And then that drug took off like a rocket. And then to find out that there may be some signs where it can actually help for cancer, bro. Like if that actually turns out to be clinically accurate, where it's reliable and valid, I think we'd have to argue that that's the best drug ever created in the history of mankind. Maybe second to penicillin. But I would have to, I even think you could argue that it's more, especially when we're talking about cancer.
I think that it would go right up there with metformin. I mean, because now you look at metformin, a lot of people that biohack and longevity hack take metformin. And if they don't take more metformin, they take berberine, because metformin is essentially does exactly what the GLP-1s does, but without the side effects of a Wegovy or a GLP-1 or an Ozempic.
Okay.
So I think when you're looking at this kind of stuff, especially too with Ivermectin, and you see what people are starting to see now, and I think Ivermectin was strong for like lung cancers and stuff like that. I think I was what I was reading. It's kind of shocking, because it makes you wonder, like, wait a minute, why was this not mainstream before. Why was it hidden? Was it suppressed? Because it does make sense, because when you look at a lot of cancers, it's blood supplies, and it's how they use cholesterol. So I think in the case with Ivermectin and Viagra, it disrupted the way that cancers were able to use cholesterol. And if it can't get to the cholesterol, then it can't get the energy, and then the blood flow gets blocked. So to me, it all makes sense. And I think that we're on the precipice of seeing a lot of stuff that ordinarily would be locked out for the sake of money is now like, wow, okay, here we go. This stuff has other uses for it.
Yeah. So just as a point of clarification, one thing about ivermectin, it's a very controversial drug because it actually gained a lot of popularity during COVID. And so primarily the uses and functions are for human parasites, for topical treatments, veterinary use, and it binds to specific nerve and muscle channels in parasites. And so I think the sildenafil has a lot more, efficacy than ivermectin as it relates specifically to this finding of the drug connected to cancer. So I'm really, really excited to see what the outcome of that whole clinical trial is going to be, because so many people can be, could receive some benefits from it, man. And that'd be big. ED, heart, and cancer. That's crazy.
But have you heard though, Len, there's a big community, especially like Chinese medicine too, where a lot of people are in the camp that they say a lot of disease is parasitic born. Even a lot of cancers they say is parasitic born or driven by parasitic. So and what do you know? Berberine is a natural anti-parasitic along with garlic. So it just seems like to me that maybe these types of things were made in a different era where drugs were done differently. But it just is shocking to me that you haven't had a breakthrough in any of these core things like cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, dementia. It just doesn't make sense to me. Diabetes, why you haven't seen massive breakthroughs in these when you've had so much time with these. And then you look at these old school drugs that were developed probably during a more, maybe I'm talking to my, but maybe developed with scientists or chemists that had maybe a more pragmatic outlook and a more moral outlook where they were actually there to solve problems rather than create products that just create a loop. Like kind of like Burry said, right? With NVIDIA and all these guys that are just in a positive, they're just in this carousel route where they're all, hey, if you buy from me, I'll buy from you. And then so on and so forth. But I mean, that's really what the food guys are doing and everything, right?
We are way over our skis in this topic. But I think because we're not journalists, we can definitely, speculate. And to me, when you look at the Heart and Lung Association, when you look at all the different types of foundations that are connected to like leukemia and cancer and things like that, I think we would be naive to believe that every actor in each of those spaces are altruistic and want to eradicate, because if that were to happen, they would cease to exist as organizations. And so while I don't believe that everybody there are bad actors, I think that we'd be crazy to believe that everybody there really wanted to see those issues eradicated. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. I think we're just, a lot of what's happening right now, and it's very confusing for a lot of people, especially large groups or large generations, is that the world is changing so much now, more than it ever has. And it's not just changing in one area, it's changing in a lot of different areas. And I think one of those areas too is just how people get information now. I mean, think about it. Everybody's a reporter. Everybody's a journalist. There's a camera everywhere. But I mean, do you even watch the regular TV anymore? Do people watch regular radio? Like, because is traditional news dying because people would rather get their news from personalities on the internet now? Like the Rubin Report or Dave Ramsey or any of the people that you see all over the place, or even, because now you see a lot of mainstream journalists that either whether they got ousted during the COVID weirdness or the woke weirdness, or they just left, but they're all killing it or crushing it. They all progress now to YouTubes and channels or their own platforms. Is that now the new medium where you can tune into anyone now and watch? I mean, somebody could tune in and listen to us talking. Like, is that the new thing, Len? Do you think that legacy media and legacy news and legacy TV is fast ceasing to exist the way we knew it?
I think traditional legacy media is dying a slow, death that's going to happen inevitably. And when you see different personalities leave the Foxes and the CNNs and all of the mainstream media outlets and start their own podcast and blow up, it's because people buy individuals they know, they like, and they trust. And when you work for a corporation, you're aligned with the beliefs, values, and assumptions of the corporation. When you break out and you don't have any of those other parameters, now we can trust what you're saying because now you have no corporate interest. And so now the market becomes your interest. So then the risk one runs is not to speak to their community just based on what they want to hear. See, that's also difficult because a lot of people, they go and they leave those mainstream media channels, but then they go and they pander to their audience because they're just feeding them what they want to hear. So I think the next wave, so I believe that one, to answer your question, legacy media is dying. Two, large personalities are capitulating to their crowd. I think the third wave is where you have people who are saying, you know what, I'm going to stand on principle. If I'm telling the truth, then you align with me. If I'm telling a truth or something that I was ignorant about, call me out. And then now the crowd begins to see, how do you respond to being called out when you say something that's not true? And so So then I think those types of people will become the large media figureheads because they're independent journalists. They're able to speak the truth and they're not pandering, and their ultimate guide is to seek truth. And I believe that at time, I think it's going to take a while, but I think those are going to be the individuals that are going to be that next rock star as it relates to news and like contemporary topics to talk about.
The only thing that worries me about situation like that is that what's the level of accountability at this point? Does somebody become so popular and too popular that they become a virtuous, right? I mean, because I mean, in the case of, like, for example, Fox News. Well, the good thing about Fox News is that, or the bad thing about Fox News is that it can become, a clique, right? It can become a gang, and it can push a narrative like we saw with CNN and CNBC and BBC and all those guys. They all rallied and pushed the same narrative. But at the same time, that also has a level of accountability for the personality that gets big there, right? And we saw that happen too, where big personalities got fired or got caught loose because either they violated, a principle, or they weren't honest, or whatever it is. You don't really have that unless it's the court of public opinion. And you could probably argue this point really well, Len. There's a lot of people that don't like Donald Trump, but there's a lot of people that like Donald Trump regardless of what he does, and they'll fall on the sword for him. So at what point does somebody, or can someone in this era become so popular or become so entertaining, or whatever you want to call it, that they can then have a lot of power where there's just no accountability, right? I mean, aside from the fact that, you can censor, but then you have First Amendment rights. I mean, dang, it looks kind of crazy there. I mean, it is the frontier, but people, I think, have to be more astute and have to be more independent in their research now than they ever have been.
And that's where I was going to go with it, because, to me, at the end of the day, the more polarizing a figure is, you're going to have extremes that you're attracting, right? Meaning like a Donald Trump, very, very polarizing. So the people who love him, he could go and, do some type of crime, and there's going to be somebody within that group that says
say crime.
he's only indicted for 34 cases.
Come on, Len. We all know it's BS, dude.
Bro, I just throw it out there just like you do with Gavin Newsom.
I get you.
So anyway, so all I'm saying is this, is that the more polarizing a figure is, they're going to attract people that say they can do no wrong. And then you're going to find that same person that's going to attract a group of people that says they can do no right. And I think that comes on us as a community of thinkers to think of on our own and independently, so that people, regardless of who they are, is not always right and they're not always wrong. And as much as I'd like to throw jabs at Trump towards you, he's not always wrong. He's just wrong a lot. But the point is that I try to give him the benefit of the doubt, just like anybody else, which is you judge somebody by the merits of what they say and what they do. And from that, just because they're one person doesn't make them infallible, and it doesn't make them all fallible. Nobody is that polarizing. So to me, to come back to your original question, as media starts to transition into different spaces, we as a viewing audience need to make sure that we're very critical about how we think and process the information we're receiving. And then we can vote with our views, because attention is the new currency. And if we divert our attention somewhere else because they give better information, then that's going to ultimately be what people compete around, as opposed to corporate interest or just a group of mindless sheeple that follow just because it's a personality cult.
I think so many people today are stuck on trying to pick a side and be on the right side. And it's so unhealthy, because no one wants to take a stand anymore. Mm-hmm. For what, I don't care if you're in the majority or you're not in the majority. Just take a stand and be who you are, and don't get influenced by I think so many people are sheeple today, and they follow like whatever, for whether they're afraid or not. Like, I just know that I just thank God that I was born in this era, because I'd be either dead or leading a revolutionary war somewhere by now. Okay. Like, here's this thing I'm flipping through, right? And it's saying, at 25, Alexander the Great conquered the world. At 26, Napoleon Bonaparte was leading an enemy or army. And it's like going through all these. At 22, Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome. And it's going through all of these different things, right? And it's going, what's wrong with men today? And it's going, at 28, a man is crying in his mom's basement still, right? And I'm just going like, what the frick, man? Stop this crap already, right? Yeah. And I think it's just, no one's picking a side anymore, and everyone's afraid to offend somebody, right? and it's like, who cares? Just go out there and take a stand and be yourself and take a risk. And that's why I think the last bad you know what's were born in the 80s, and then that's it, Len. It's gone. It's done. After that, there's a gap, but I am pretty excited for the next generation coming up. I think they got it, but
our kids are going to be amazing, man. You got 7 and I've got 2. The 9 of them, man, I think they're going to change the world.
I think they got it. But at any rate, look, here's something interesting as we're talking about kids and what's happening, because I just recently, 3 of my kids just recently made it to club soccer. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Len, my life is completely turned around again, upside down, all over again, as I try to figure this whole thing out for them. And they're really good at it. They're really into it. So I've been at soccer practices, and they don't end till like 10 o'clock at night, 2 days a week.
Traveling everywhere.
It's just
we went through that with basketball.
But, okay, so you understand. You understand what's going on then. I have no idea how expensive football is. Soccer. It's the most expensive club sport you can play. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
But and that's where I get mad at a lot of the politicians and a lot of the school, these women that ran the school departments for so many years, because they put all the cutting in events and in extracurricular activities. And this point that I'm about to ask you right now, this is where I can't just help but just blame politicians more and more and more. But at the same time, I have to call you out, or have to call out parents as well. Parents have to be more vigilant today than you ever have been. You have to be so vigilant today with who your kids are talking to, who's talking to them, even at school, what they're listening to, all of these different things. Because you got to be involved as much as you can. Go to back to school nights, go to the meet the teacher things, go watch them, see how they're interacting in life, how they're socially interacting in life. Len, I went to this meet the teacher thing last week for my two kids that are in high school. And I was shocked at how unsocial these kids are with their parents rocking around the school. My kids, they're like, da, 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 da. And I'm like, damn, my kids are legit. They ain't going to have no problem, right? Mm-hmm. Now, that's not to say they're not going to have a problem. They're going to have problems, but I'm going to be able to focus on the problems, the core problems that really matter. But I think that's a big fault of a lot of politicians and a lot of stuff here too, where we talk about, is this the first generation we raise where they don't know how to be bored, right? Phones, streaming, media, games, on demand. I mean, you at the same time, I think it's sad that you don't own anything anymore, right? But it's pretty cool that you could just press a button and stream whatever movie you want. But you don't go down to your library and pick that DVD or that CD or that cassette or that record, that LP, right? If we're back in the day, and you don't put that somewhere, you don't own that anymore. And if the internet goes out or the electric, you're screwed. You can't do anything anymore. You're done for. You lose everything. So is this the first generation we're seeing now where kids are not allowed to be bored? They're not allowed to figure it out.
I think it's actually the second generation, because once electronics were ubiquitous in everybody's house, you see kids that were being raised on their iPads and, had their little Nintendos and had their little private gaming, platforms and everything. And so I think this is the second generation that it's happening to. And I remember being an only child growing up, and the way I had to socialize was I had to go out of my house and find friends and go ride bikes and go play flag football in the street. And I don't want to sound like the old guy on the porch saying, get off my lawn. But I think what you're saying has a lot of merit, which is, how do you find ways to sharpen your mind? How many kids nowadays are reading books for pleasure? How many kids nowadays are using their imagination, with playing with cars and toys and dolls and, all of those things, using their imagination? I remember, watching, little girls, they would get their little doll houses and, fix things and stuff like that. And boys would take their action figures and, their imagination, because we underestimate the power of imagination. Because think about it. Now with all of the video games and all of that, it takes away our imagination, because somebody else used their imagination and ingenuity to fill in that gap. And I believe that part of our kids' brains for the second generation is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And just like muscles, when you don't use them, they start to die. And I think we're at a point right now where we've got to really pull back the curtain and say, look, we've got to take, even though all of this stuff is available to us, doesn't mean that we have to partake in it. We've got to get our kids back to a position where they can learn how to use their imagination, where they can, avoid boredom because they're able to take trips in their brain.
Yeah. I don't know what the balance is, and I think I'm still experimenting with it, but I never restricted. All my kids grew up with the device. And I know a lot of people that might say that I didn't do it right, but I don't have a device issue with my kids. And I never restricted anything, Len. I never parental controlled stuff. I mean, as soon as they had it, they had the iPad. nothing. And I don't ever have an issue with people not with people. I don't ever have an issue. They are people now. Right. Sometimes I think my kids are people now when I'm in the kitchen and they come. By the way, all three of my boys are all my height or about to be taller than me. So
that's crazy. I wanted to ask you a question though, because this is really important because, okay, I bet you though, Chris, even though there were no restrictions necessarily, like you let them have exposure to it, I bet you probably monitored what they watched, how long they watched, how they used it, and what they did with it. I bet you put some restrictions around that.
Right. And that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you because how much of this does come down to parenting? Because yeah, there was hey, you're watching that too long now. You got to go outside, or hey, you're doing this, or hey, and I don't know how you did it, but I remember the first thing. I don't know how we survived. I don't know how anybody survives without it. But as soon as we had our first child in the womb, I remember one of Mary's friends said, "You got to go pick up the book called the Ferber Method," and we Ferberized all of our kids. And I can tell you right now that I don't know how anybody survives not doing that. I don't. I really don't. Because even now today, I have teenagers. They put themselves to bed. They wake themselves up. I don't have to deal with any of that mess. And I think a lot of it has to do with course correction and allowing them to have autonomy and to do things. But at the same time, you're just kind of coming in and checking in every night. Yeah. And you're coming in and checking a little bit. And by the way, I've had some mishaps with almost all my kids.
Of course. It's called being a parent.
What the heck were you doing, dude?
Right.
Right? I was proud of my third oldest son this past school year because I got an email from the teacher that he had like 4 or 5 missing assignments, and it was like 2 or 3 weeks left in the school year, right? And he's like, if he does this, he's going to fail this class, right? And I about a few days later, he brought it up, and he didn't know I knew already. And I was like, dang, all right, dude, he caught it before I even brought it up to him, and he fixed it. So I was like, all right, cool. He knew he had a problem, and he fixed it on his own. I see where a lot of people are going with this, but I think that it still goes back to the age-old adage that it starts in the home. And you know, you can blame a lot of things for a lot of problems. I think the school system, a lot of the issues of the school system is the government, but meddling. A lot of it starts in the home for that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you got to force your kids out there to do things.
I agree. Like parent. We had TV, you know, we didn't have the iPads and all of that, but our kids had the Nintendo little, you know, game consoles and stuff like that. But for us, what we did is we said, okay, look, you can play this either after homework is over or on the weekend. And so we had access to all of those things, but we were very intentional about the parameters we put on them. And so I think, you know, when you talked about being at school, you know, a lot of times the parents, they're not putting those parameters on those devices, and they're using them as a substitute for parenting. Because, you know, when you want your kid to be out of your face instead of interacting with them, you just shove them with the iPad and put it in the corner. That's not how you're supposed to raise your kids. You raise your kids using those devices as an assistive tool, not a way to substitute parenting. And so you've got to be able to do that. And speaking of schools, Chris, one of the things that we were talking about before was declining enrollment. And it's a nationwide thing that's going on. And you talked about the role of the parent. You talked about different societal trajectories and ways that we're going. What's on your mind about declining enrollment, and what do you think's going on?
Well, I think a lot of the declining enrollment right now has to do with migration too. So I think you're seeing like a lot of migration stuff, like specifically California is seeing that a lot with school migration. You're also seeing it in Texas too. There's a lot of it going on in North Texas. But I think number one, it's migration. I think you're seeing a lot of people that are now leaving neighborhoods, and you're seeing the net effect of that. But at the same time, I think that also people are seeing the options with charter schools, private schools. Charter schools are very affordable. Online schools are dominating still right now. I mean, a lot of kids, my kids did online school for 3 years. My kids, all of COVID. Yeah. And then private online school, when I first got to Texas for, I think 2 years, I think they did private online, and that helped them a lot. So I think I think parents are fed up with school systems pushing narratives. And all of it, I don't think is one thing, Len. I think it's a lot of things coming down on the back, and it's like the straw that broke the camel's back. I think it's just all of these different things are compounding now, and people are starting to see, I'm not really getting the value out of that school district or school system that they're saying I did. Like who wants to send their school? Nobody wants to send their kid to school and you have to worry about what they're hearing or they're learning.
I agree.
You don't want to learn about, you don't want to have to worry about that. It's just odd. It was, in fact, it was funny because I know this is not a thing in California because I know my kids went to school in California, but my kids, when they came home the other day, they were saying something about school. And I'm like, dang, they're that strict. And I went, that's like some old school stuff. Like, I didn't know that they still did that in school. Like, I thought they went away with that.
What are you talking about?
They're not like, if they didn't turn in, if they didn't pass a physical test, they weren't allowed to do something in gym class. So if they weren't able to do push-ups or a certain amount of push-ups and pull-ups, they weren't allowed to do it, to track. And I'm like, whoa, like, okay, that's hardcore right there. I didn't know they still did that. Well, apparently they still do it here in Texas. Well, maybe that's the majority of Olympic athletes come from Texas. Did you know?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Interesting.
Either.
Okay.
I didn't know that either until recently. But I think a lot of it has to do with migration. I don't think it's as big as a deal as people probably think it is. I think it just has a lot to do with people don't want to live in those areas anymore. And you're starting to see it now. I mean, people don't want to live in California and get taxed for everything they do.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, there's a lot of different variables, and it's just up to us to try to parse out what those variables are and make sense to it. Because on the one hand, when you looked at the preceding generations, the generations before us, you had a dynamic economy where you had people that were growing up, and then they'd go off to college or go to a trade school, and they'd go get a job, and then they'd have to change locations and they'd move. And then you had affordable housing in those areas where people can move into a house. And so now you had whole communities, and then you had people moving from urban areas to suburban areas. So then you had up and coming communities. And so they had to build schools to accommodate those kids. And so now you have those same suburban communities, but because the prices of houses have gone up, then people are saying, well, why would I move? And so then instead of leaving in 5 to 7 years, they're now living there 20 and 30 years. And so then you don't have this incoming influx of new families into the neighborhood. So like I can tell you right now, like in my neighborhood, I would say maybe 20% of the families have been here less than 10 years. Everybody else has been here more than 10 years in a big way. So now the surrounding schools are starting to have declining enrollment. Why? Because in the neighborhood where I live, it's a mature community. So you've got, parents and grandparents, and their kids are moving away and moving out. And so I would imagine that many of them are now delaying having kids. So now because they're delaying having kids, what does that mean? You don't have kids going to school, and so when, like I've got a 29-year-old and a 27-year-old as of the 29th of August, and they're, one has a girlfriend and one, it's complicated, but neither of them have kids. And
I'm taking lessons from you.
Neither of them have kids. And so because of that, like by the time I was 24, I had my first, and my wife was 23. By the time I was 29, I already had 2 kids. We were good. So meaning, now, 24 plus 5 is 29. And so now there's a new kid enrolled into the school. Whereas my 29-year-old, he doesn't have any kids. I'm glad because, he's not in a situation where, it would be ideal for him where he is in his life. But that's not the point. The point is because people were able to be equipped financially to support kids. More schools continue to have more kids because they're around and they were being birthed. So like you said, there's all these different factors.
So what we need to do is we need to find and force all the baby boomers to sell their houses. So that young people can move into those neighborhoods.
Hey, I believe that if baby boomers had $300,000-$500,000 of equity and they can move into a house that's 200,000, take that net 200,000 or 300,000 and add that to their retirement, they'd probably move in a heartbeat. It's just not the same levels of opportunities. I think
I agree. I agree. So what about this, Len, in wrapping up today? Are you ready to submit to the AI doctors of the world? Because most people are ready for it. According to a lot of new studies that have come out. And what was it? This one you sent me too. Was this consumers are ready for an AI enabled healthcare? Are health systems ready? Oh, we're dead. Are the health systems ready? Nope, they're not.
That's crazy.
Where are you at with it, Len? Because I can tell you where I'm at with it. I'm all go. I'm ready. In fact, I'm already doing it. I feed everything to my chatbot. Every single thing, my doctor reports, my health reports. I check my blood pressure 3 times a day, my supplement stacks. Every single thing I feed it. Where are you at with it?
So check this out. So last episode, I told you about my issue with my appendectomy, right? So,
no, you didn't tell me that. Oh, yeah. Wait. You're talking
on
about
on the last episode, I was telling you about my journey.
Your appendicitis. Right? Yep.
Yeah. So check this out. So I sent a message to ChatGPT and I said, I asked it, hey, this is what I'm feeling. These are my symptoms. I haven't gone to the restroom and should I be concerned? And it says, yes, this is worth addressing now, but not necessarily an emergency itself. And then it asked me where was the pain located. So I told it and it said no pain meds today. And it said you should go get urgent medical attention tonight. If you stop passing gas and your abdomen becomes increasingly swollen, develop worsening severe abdominal pain, repeated vomiting, or can't keep liquids down, you should go to the doctor now. And so I was like, okay, this is what happened to my friend. This is what's going on. And based on that interaction, that's what led me to the doctor. And I would not have gone because of that. So between my friend and between AI giving me advice about what to look at, I put those two things together, man. And thank God, because, I'm sitting here having a conversation with you, having had surgery just a few days ago. And so I say all of that to say that I'm all for it, man. If I can get quick advice and I can have essentially a device that has access to all of the medical records that ever existed in life, dude, I'm all in. Sign me up.
I know you don't see this on your phone. It might do it differently, but there's like a thing on your iPhone called Apple Health. I use it to track my steps.
Okay.
Because I don't like to install a lot of apps on my phone. I try to keep it as minimal as possible. And I don't trust a lot of developers. But as soon as I launched my ChatGPT on my phone, it said, now integrate Apple Health. So it did it. I'm going, dang, see, it's happening already. But I agree with it. I think it's phenomenal. I tell my kids all the time, I say, and my kids do it now too. They say, I got this thing on my foot, Dad. I said, take a picture of it and send it to your chatbot. And keep it in a project so you're continually training this chatbot on you and what to look for. But I think the medical field, much like the educational field, is going to be completely turned upside down because of AI. Because
100%.
I mean, you already see it in the medical field where it's like radiology. No one goes to school for that anymore. Why would you have? The only reason why you need to go to radiology is because you still have to have a licensed doctor, radiologist tech, sign off on the AI interpretation. And that really should be there always. You should always have human eyes look at it last.
100%.
Right. Because you have empathy that a machine doesn't have. Right. And human judgments that need to be made on the fly. But I think that you're about to see here's my only concern. My only concern is that I really hope that I'm not going to say Republican politicians, but I'm going to say, let me say it this way. I really hope that Democratic politicians and liberal politicians don't find a way to make this evil and take away from it and create more problems, because this is basically going to solve affordable healthcare, right? I mean, I think AI is going to make healthcare affordable. So I pray that the people that want to consistently make jobs for themselves don't get involved and try to regulate it down where it can't do what it's going to do. But at the same time, I hope that the other side, mostly the Republican people, the rhino types of guys, don't come in here and go, how can we make this scandalous so that we can make more money on this, right? And then price people out of the market and do all those types of dastardly things to people where you're paying 70 different times for something that you should have only be paying $1 for, right? So I hope that people really can get in there and balance that out. But at the same time, I would still heavily invest in learning it and understanding it, because here's the reality. If you didn't heavily invest or learn in how to use computers back when computers were coming of age, like in the 90s, you're toast today. You're absolutely toast. So today, the difference is if you don't understand AI and learn AI and how to apply it in your, not only just your daily life, but businesses and professions, it's going to be very difficult for you to compete in the world, yet alone function, because soon when you go to the ATM, you will have a conversation with AI. You will.
That is correct. I agree. I could not agree with you more. And if you think about it, we call nursing hotlines all the time and we say, hey, these are the symptoms I'm feeling. And, with your chatbot, you don't have to wait in line. You can reach out 24/7. You can get an instant answer. You don't have to worry about the nurse being incorrect or tired or just uninterested and not probing or asking enough questions.
Or mad because whatever.
Because you call in cursing her out because you're in pain in real time. The chatbots don't care about that. So I'm 100% in agreement with you. And I just hope that our politicians on the right and the left don't take something that's meant to be good for people and find some way to make it bad. And so I agree with you. I think that we just need to continue to find ways to make sure that we continue in the area of privacy so that our personal information doesn't get leaked or hacked out there and all of those things. But where it can provide information, I'm telling you, man, I'm a believer because firsthand, it was a benefit to me. So,
and it's real when you get into that situation. It's real.
Yes,
it's
absolutely. Yes. Right. When you're feeling it in real time and you need an answer right now, don't put me on hold, bro. I don't want to hear any, classical jazz while I'm in pain.
No. Anyway. Well, Len, it's always a pleasure, sir. You have a phenomenal week.
Likewise.
Again,
likewise.
For those who out there like this content, like and subscribe, follow us. We'd love to hear from you. Comment, and we'll see you on the next one. Len, have a killer week.
Thank you, brother.
Everyone else out there, stay classy, stay safe, and just don't believe the hype, and stay close to your family because everything's going to be all right. God bless you guys. Thanks, Len.
All right. Take care, Chris.
Bye.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.